I tend to be mellow. My track, I keep my track mellow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Your mellow track.
my mellow track.
It's like a soda.
Yeah,
Mountain
Mellow
Dew,
yellow.
mellow
mellow
track.
yellow. Yeah,
Mellow yellow.
yeah. We played a game the other night. Chris got a neat game. It basically there's a bunch of letters around, and you get a topic like, female names, and then you have to go around, and each person has 10 seconds to think of a one. There's letters that aren't there, but ABC right around, and so there were sodas.
Oh.
Names of sodas came to mind. It's pretty, I was going way back there,
Yeah.
Fanta,
Yeah.
and just some
That
of
still is a thing.
it is, but I think about it. I haven't.
Yeah.
Sure, maybe I had some like over the holidays, but I think I've been like 3 or 4 years without drinking a soda.
Really?
This far, yeah. I mean, intentionally,
Yeah.
just like drinking a whole soda. I think we had some ginger ale, and a punchy stuff, but yeah. Before that,
Nice job.
well, like I say, it's just been. I haven't missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's, if it's that's a good one to avoid if you can.
yeah, I think so.
But yeah.
But it made me think about it. It's like, man, yeah, going way back.
Did you come up with any other names that were?
Oh, well, like you say, the Mellow Yellow, the Mountain Dew, all those, Mr. Pibb.
Mr. Pibb, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't think Mellow Yellow's a thing anymore. It became...
Oh, did it become something else? Sundrop?
No, it
Okay.
became something else, and now I think it's called Starry.
Really?
Yeah.
Had no clue.
Sierra Mist.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, see, really?
I don't know. I
Because
thought...
Days of Thunder, you remember Days of Thunder? He drove the Mellow Yellow car.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, Mellow Yellow's not a thing anymore. No, I don't remember that.
You know? Oh, okay. Tom Cruise movie. Okay. Sorry.
I actually never saw that movie.
Oh, I think that
Yeah.
was I think that was
Racing
like
movie, yeah.
when he first met Nicole Kidman, maybe. Even
Okay.
being on the scenes of Mellow Yellow or Days of Thunder. Yeah. I'm not recommending it necessarily as a movie to watch, but yeah, it made me think of it. Yeah. Little flashback for some of the folks from my generation.
Days of Thunder.
Yep. Welcome to How I See It with me, Mark Pratt, and
Justin Sternberg. This is a podcast that works to counter cultural polarization through thoughtful conversations.
Yeah. So, speaking of Days of Thunder,
yeah,
it's about to be the new year.
it is. Yes, it is.
2024.
Yes. 2024.
Those years, they just keep rolling,
They do.
you know?
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember Y2K?
I was just thinking about that. John is actually the same age as the year. Because he was
So
a
he's
Y2K
a Y2K
baby.
Yeah.
His actual his birthday will be tomorrow.
Nice.
So there's basically 3
Wow.
days out of the year that his, chronological
Right.
age doesn't match the year. So
Right.
there's 3 days in 23 that he'll be
That's
24.
cheating, man. That makes it too easy. How old are you? What year is it? Yeah.
And the funny part of that is he's 30 years. I'm 30 years older than him, so it matches up with mine as well.
Oh, okay.
So I'm 54 and 24.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's pretty handy.
Yeah, it
I
is
would like
pretty
to have a trick like that. I don't know. I was born in 83. That really is
Oh, wow.
just not a great...
you were born the year my brother graduated from high school. Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah,
Just,
that's
it seemed like to
that's
keep the
exactly
time.
why.
Yeah.
So just ask him what reunion he's on. That's how old you are.
There you go.
Yeah, now you have something to.
41st.
Yeah,
So you just had a good one, probably.
he might have.
Maybe.
He
I don't
might
know.
have.
Do they do 40 year? I don't know.
I'm sure they do.
I've never been
He
to a
went back
reunion.
to Troy and spoke at the
Oh, cool.
the graduating class reunion
For his
type thing.
40th?
Yeah, I think so.
Ah.
Something like that.
Nice.
Yep.
Very nice.
Because they do the the 83, the 93. There's a spokesman from each class that kind of speaks. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Days of Thunder.
Excuse me. Days of Thunder.
So yeah.
2024.
Yeah,
We're
so
dubbing it
2024.
the Days of Thunder.
Yes, I do remember Y2K.
Okay.
To answer your question,
Yeah.
we were Chris and I were at the
hospital having John.
we were well. John had been born on the 28th.
Wow. Yeah.
So
everyone-
as of the 31st, basically, we had the option. It's like, do we go home, and brave it out just away from everybody?
Right.
Because, the hospital is kind of in town, in the city, if
Right.
you will, city of Elmira. And it's like, well, we
Elmira. Right, sorry.
Elvira, that
Yeah.
was, but yeah. Either way, yeah. Or, do we stick it out here in the city in the hospital where if things shut down, the generators,
Right.
are going to kick on, and we can ride it out a little bit. But
But maybe everyone's computers in the hospital is fried.
yeah, and then all anarchy's going to break out in the big city. So yeah, we went home and
Nice.
braved it out there, but it was Yeah, but I remember the anxiety of sorts that kind of went along with that. The computers are going to shut down when they go to 0-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of, and
What's funny about that is how. I mean, I was young, so I guess I didn't have maybe a great perspective on it. But it seemed like literally no one knew if it was going to mess up or not.
right. Yeah, that was the whole question.
Yeah,
And I remember,
that's scary.
Yep.
What are our computers going to do? I don't know. Ask the programmer. I don't know. I
Yeah.
wasn't there.
And it was that conflict between Cobalt and and these other programs. It's like, yeah, I remember that. And Larry Burkett, I remember him. He was a big proponent that the whole financial systems would shut down, and
Oh, okay.
yeah,
And
they didn't. But like you say, I think I give him credit. I think there was a lot of people. I'm not sure it made all that difference, but I think there was a lot of people that were proactive about it. That probably helped in some ways that we may never know of, but
yeah,
Yeah,
that make an
forethought.
interesting movie.
yeah, I
The
suppose
guy
so.
who prevented Y2K.
There you go. Yeah. But I think in that context,
Or now Y2K24.
there you go. In that context, when you think about preventative, things or planning for the future, or in that process of 2024, planning with the end in mind sometimes as we talk about, what comes to mind for you?
What about you, Mark? I'll be honest and say I've been real focused just on getting some side work done, and
Okay.
my mind has been very occupied for the
You've
last
been very
month.
present.
Yeah.
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 Just
That's a good way to put it.
doing
Yes.
the next thing.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Haven't really had an opportunity to reflect in that way, but I'm glad we're talking about it because I enjoy that part, right?
Sure. Is that something you would routinely do? I mean, is this year a little different for you in that context?
I was never like a flip the year over and have all the for me, January was kind of the, it's January, it's time, it's kind of like
Sure.
kicked off those thoughts more
Yep.
than kind of rolling into the new year but yeah, typically I think one of the things we've done, Megan and I, and, through the years have kind of chosen a word
Yep.
for the year, which,
Yeah.
kind of tries to set up kind of a mental mindset for the year, I guess, I think is a good way to put it. And I like doing that. But yeah, as far as I also not, I have a blog post actually, and we probably talk about it a lot of times. I'm not a huge fan of specific goals.
Sure.
As much as I desire to have like long-term goals that can't necessarily be met in a year. But I've also kind of vacillated on that. I think goals are good. I think it's silly to say they're bad, but I think they can be tyrannical.
Sure.
If not held loosely.
So
properly,
you're
loosely.
definitely not a resolutions guy.
Nope.
No, I
Never
gotcha.
been a resolutions guy.
I understand.
And I thought that would be
Yeah.
I think it turned out okay not being a resolutions guy. Like I don't feel
Yeah,
like I missed
no.
out on
I think so.
opportunities. But yeah, how about you?
Well, I was thinking you mentioned vacillation,
Yeah.
and so then I tend to think of those, as we've talked about before, the love styles,
Yeah.
and that first stage is, stress management. We have those styles because we, have a certain stress and we adapt. But the second stage of that is self and others awareness. And I think that's what my next year, is about for me. Thinking about my self-awareness, not in a way that makes it selfish, not that in a way that I'm selfishly focused, but ways in which I desire to grow in the coming year. And I think part of that growth is that ability to know myself a little better as I age, that kind of thing. And I think for me, sometimes what I'm thinking about now for 2024 in some ways are the things that I didn't get done in 2023. They kind of roll those things over, but yet I'm also growing in
your self-awareness. Still haven't gotten it.
Yeah, exactly. Just ways
Is that one?
That's a part of it.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, continuing to grow in self-awareness. And I think part of it for me is maybe even in some ways pulling back. I'm still wrestling with this, but I think at times there's something to be said for being forthright and having, just addressing the issue. And, and in my line of work, I routinely do that, with people in such a way that is rather forthright. And I can probably stand to kind of pull that back just a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I think it's more so with my family, because I've definitely, just plodded right ahead into a difficult topic, and I probably could have used a little more tact. I probably could have used a little more. I could have done it more gracefully. That kind of thing. And I think, especially, with Lizzie and Chris, they're just a little more on the softer side, which is good. But yeah, I just need to be, because sometimes I know Chris is fully aware, she has self-awareness, and yet sometimes I see that and I might address something in a forthright manner that makes it seem as if I'm being critical of her.
Yeah.
Even though I know she's aware and she might be aware that I'm aware, but it's not something that I need to necessarily, say, hey, what are you thinking about this, or what do you want to do about that? Or, that kind of thing. So that's a part of it for 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Growing in that. And I think there's a part of it too. And I think from my perspective, how I view the aging process is also changing my 2024, as far as thinking about changing up some of my exercise habits, kind of areas that I need to focus a little more on, maybe a little less running that just kind of, it's not like
kind of tears down the body.
Yeah. It's not like I need to drop, lose calories. I'm not burning calories.
Yeah.
I need to hold muscle maybe a little more, as I'm growing. I mean, granted, it's a balance.
It is.
Type thing, but I am that is something that I'm aware of. And in that process, I'm thinking about my my spiritual aspects of still wrestling with that, what I do in my strength versus how I wait on God. In some ways, that's another component for me as far as, and maybe it's still out of that awareness piece that I'm recognizing, okay, these things are far bigger than I am. And how do I kind of pull back? Because I think there is that age, that a part of the aging process has helped me recognize that my energy isn't sufficient.
Yeah.
And it just tends to wear my body down trying to think that way.
Yeah.
It's futile.
Yeah.
Much like scripture talks about.
Yeah.
But, and then I think, there's just, I think with my parents, I'm more mindful of like end of life type dynamics, you know. And I think in some ways, when you mentioned the word of the year, you know, my word of the year type thing, I'm not wrestling, but part of mine is that ability to, confidence isn't the right word, but yet it's an aspect of recognizing that I need to be mindful of what I'm doing, because I respect the fact that in other words, for an example, I'm just thinking of different people that I pray for who have fallen, you know, in their, and I tend to think about that now, because it's like, I used to be able to stand on a 6-foot step ladder, 8 foot, you know, on the very top and reach something, you know, but I just realized I've noticed that my balance isn't the same as it used to be, you know, to where that's foolish for me. Well, it was foolish then. Clarification. It was foolish then, but I could do it because my body was able. But it's like now,
it's like people who say, I'm a functioning drunk or functioning alcoholic. It's like, well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. But I think, you know, so those are the things that I'm a little more aware of, what my body can and can't do, or isn't, you know, as able to do as it used to. And just being able to admit that and then adjust in such a way that continues to, you know, say, okay, it's okay to amend. It's okay to adjust. And yet we can still have a, you know, God confidence that I don't have to pull back in a fearful state, I guess that's kind of the difference. It's like helping me recognize what is real.
Yeah.
What is, still looking for that word. So,
well, yeah, it's kind of like the golden goose analogy where you could keep, you know, like right now, you know, as you've lived, like the golden eggs keep popping out kind of for free. And now it's like, well, if I do certain things, I might cook the golden goose. I got to be careful about, you know. Yeah. So it's more like, I don't know, it's like a perspective on longevity. Yeah. It's a good word.
That is a good word.
You're free to use it if you'd like.
I appreciate
this idea of like confidence. It's not losing confidence, but it's like adjusting what you're confident in for the purposes of longevity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even
no offense, I don't think that's quite the word yet. No, I see the questioning in your own eyes, you know, as you think about it. But yeah,
it's the word, Mark.
I'm hearing a voice inside my head that says that's the word.
It's the word. Anyway, yeah, no, that's all. But kind of all the things you said seem to be geared towards how can I adjust, right?
Yeah.
Towards kind of longevity, like being able to do what you're doing, but at an adjusted level that says I can keep doing it. Yeah. Running is a good one because I feel like it makes me think of Megan's dad, who I want to say maybe 10 years ago or something. He was running like 13 miles a day.
Sure.
And he loved it. Like he was just, I mean, when you talk about runner's high, I think I think he was high all the time. 13 miles a day. But it destroyed his knees.
Okay.
And he can't run now. So, you know, he does other things. But yeah, it's running is one of those things that's I feel like it's kind of a young man's game.
Yeah.
Just my perspective on people who are runners and then they end up having bad knees, so many things, bad hips. And
no, I hear you.
I kind of said, you know, I shouldn't have pushed it, you know, run as much.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Granted, I'm not in that category, but like you say, a 3-4 miler is fine with me. But you know, yeah. And then, that's part of that. It's like, okay, what is enough?
Yeah.
And granted, I'm aware, you know, like when we play Frisbee, you know, you're out there on a grass, you know, field. Yeah. You know, it's far different than, you know, running on macadam or, you know, stuff like that, pavement, you know, that does kind of
wear on the joints.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. I like to save my running for Frisbee, so.
I hear you.
Preserve it all to try and catch John as much as I can.
No offense. Good luck with that.
I haven't had much.
That is one thing I gave up on a few years ago. Yeah.
Boy, don't stop running.
It's just so easy for him to run fast.
Yeah.
That's the yeah.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Not just run fast. I mean, he just like has this natural springy motion. You know what I mean? Where I don't know.
Yeah. It was fun. We did actually good Christmas memory. We played some flag football.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And they
Yes.
were over Christmas, well, prior to the weekend before Christmas. But yeah, it was good. I was busting on John just a little bit. I think because he would, the minute we'd get the football on our end, he'd fly up the field.
Yeah.
But fortunately for me, we were playing flag football.
Yeah.
So if I timed it just right, I could swivel my hip enough to move the flag, and he would go flying right on by. And then, then it was far. The rest of my family members were a little more evenly, even physical ability.
Yeah.
So once I got by John, it was like, okay, I'm much better off now. But yeah, the timing was everything.
Yeah.
But there was I think I'm pretty sure I had the. He had missed my flags more times than he got it on that kickoff return type stuff.
Well done.
But yeah,
Well done.
Yeah, they were busting on me because I was stretching out later. It's like, well, hey, those hip flexors, I can still stretch them, but it's all that movement you got to be able to do with those flags. But yeah, that was fun. But yeah,
That's awesome.
fun times.
So, which side of the family was that with?
That was my mom's side of the family.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That was when we went up to Pennsylvania.
Nice.
Be able to. Yeah.
Last time I played flag football, I did that to my finger.
That crooked ring finger.
Crooked ring finger. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That was with Jenny Klein's family. She would.
Oh wow.
She would be very appalled to know called her out on that, but it wasn't their fault. That was just like a tackle, and then like I thought I jammed my finger, but no,
wow.
it was stayed permanently like that.
Wow. Yeah.
So flag football, it's supposed to be the tamer one. But
It's supposed to be.
Sometimes I don't know about that.
Yeah. My family tends to be a little more competitive anyway, so that's tame competition isn't, but yeah, it is far better than being tackled.
Yeah.
No doubt. I could just imagine how much that would hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did
go ahead.
Yeah. I did take out the neighbor's fence by accident. That was their little garden fence.
But they didn't need that, right?
Yeah, we got it straightened back
Chesterton's
out.
fence.
It was one of those little rabbit fences.
Oh, nice.
And I was running down or on that side to get John's flag, and I saw the fence, but then I didn't see the bricks. They had little brick pavers at the edge of it.
Did you hurt
Well,
yourself?
no, I didn't. It wasn't bad, but the funny part was I stepped on one of those brick pavers and it slid.
Oh.
So then it's like I couldn't quite stop. So then I couldn't catch my balance, and then I fell onto the fence. So it really wasn't a big deal. I didn't like full on run into the fence. If I hadn't slipped, I could have avoided it, but didn't see those bricks underneath the grass, and away it went.
Sounded like it would hurt.
That
The way
wasn't
you
too bad.
described it,
I just kind of fell onto it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked a little more
Yeah.
hurtful than it was.
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, good job not getting hurt.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's where I'm at. So
Yeah,
I'm at this
that's right.
point of finding that balance of
Yeah. How much effort to put in. And,
yeah, not getting hurt,
not getting hurt. Yeah.
longevity,
Yeah.
planning with the end in mind, continuing to maintain healthy physical.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as you and I talk, it's like I find myself kind of stepping into that old person perspective. But it's funny because as I think about it, it's fun to think about the different stages. And, even with like Frisbee, we're interacting with 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, I'm in the 50-somethings. And, it's fun just to kind of observe that. It's just fun to observe that difference, in people, it's just, that's, it's fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny because that will be a future topic. We'll foreshadow here just a little bit. We have some generational plans in the future, so that's a good way to think about it. The pros and cons, if you will.
Yeah.
It would be a dangerous thing. I don't know if it would be a dangerous thing, but it would be a interesting thing to have. It would be dangerous to have a 20-year-old, mind in a 50-year-old body.
Hmm.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because it's like
Yeah.
your 40-year-old body doesn't run the same
Right.
as it did when it was a 20-year-old body.
Yep.
And that's just, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was because it was funny because my dad, we went, he had Christmas, with us, and it was funny because he took about a 2-hour nap, the same as my niece. Yeah, let's see, my niece's daughter, who's,
Yeah.
she's probably
Three or
three or
four.
four. Yeah,
Yeah.
she took a 2-hour nap that day too, and my dad took a
Yeah.
2-hour nap at the same time. It's like, yep, okay,
that's
what happens about that time, Yeah,
That's who we should have on, your dad and your niece. Or...
yeah. the niece's daughter would might be a little tough, but yeah, it would be. That's what we do need to do is do that.
Yeah.
Pull a 20-something in a
Yeah.
octogenarian.
Yeah.
Octogenarian. There you go. Yeah, octogenarian. And just kind of walk that difference.
That should be your word of the year.
I'm still working
Speaking
on
of goals.
Speaking of you deciding my goals for me, yes.
So, what is the benefit, or maybe even if you can think of detractions or bad sides to kind of this annual cycle and us kind of renewing our look on things in the beginning of beginning of the year. What are some of the pros and cons to that, you think?
I think part of the pros is, a new year is a new opportunity. Mm-hmm. Not that every day isn't a new opportunity,
Yeah.
Each day is new.
Yeah.
His mercy is new each and every day, that kind of thing. And I think, in that context, even with CR, it's not about, 5 days from now. It's about what I do in the next 5 seconds, 5 minutes, that kind of thing. So
one day at a time, one moment at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, each day is a new moment,
Yeah.
Where we can, and I think that, there's a similar dynamic where years are concerned.
Yeah.
I can have an awareness of what last year looked like generally. And yet I can still think about it in this context of, well, what do I want this year to be, how do I want this year to be different? And I was reading it was kind of like a small personal retreat type information, as you thought about, and it was asking about, what the disappointments of the last year were and, how they affected you, and what were the wins of the last year and, and what can you take away from that? Mm-hmm. And I think, when we look at circumstances in the context of a year, we can recognize how, there were certain hurts of last year, and some of those we can probably avoid, some of which we can avoid, and some of those were unavoidable. Mm-hmm. Those aspects that have changed us, and I there's that part of me that would say, just kind of my mom's death and working with my dad and his process, that has probably hit me a little harder, than I would have prior to, just because of that longevity perspective. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, nobody's guaranteed tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But I think it was a reminder for me.
Yeah.
From that era, I definitely felt that more, in years. Mm-hmm. I've been 3 years with, since the blood clot type
mm-hmm.
stuff, but that was a wake up call then. And I think, it's a further wake up call. And I think, each year is new, and to be able to look back and, see where we've come from, mm-hmm. What has happened.
Yeah.
And how that has changed my perspective. And is that change healthy? Is it something that I need to challenge, or is it something that's beneficial and it's actually wisdom and I can grow in that? And I think that's the thing that makes it beneficial, whether I'm 20, 30, 40, 80, 90, to be able to say, okay, because I think a lot of it does come back to that kind of open-mindedness type thing.
Yeah.
So often we get fixed in doing the same thing the same way day after day, and those become, habits and ruts and
or injury points.
Yeah.
When our abilities slow down. Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of that ability to be able to say, okay, who do I need to be listening to? Who do I need to not listen to anymore? Or, just in that process of, kind of those, both the benefits, the pros and cons, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I like what you're saying. I think, Celebrate Recovery, it really pushes the daily, one day at a time. And they have, specifically in regards to inventory, which is very similar to what we're talking about with the annual kind of turnover and what we do often or should be doing. I don't know that it's always pushed as much as the looking, like the resolutions as much as, hey, what about last year? How did that,
Sure.
How would you sum that up? And I think that's reflection is important, and I think this is a good opportunity for that.
Yep.
Anyway, what I was going to say is CR kind of taught me the value of the daily and weekly, inventory and kind of that process to where I've gained more in the last 10 years of really focusing on that. You know what I mean? Then kind of the old style of like, oh, the year's turning over, I guess I should think about this again. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think that's enough if you really want to see real change or real growth.
Yep.
I think you need something that's daily and weekly and, we talk a lot about kind of quiet time, reading time with God, that kind of thing. And I think that's an important time of the day, one moment at a time, one day at a time to kind of reflect on the day. And, but yeah, all that being said, I do think there's value in the annual aspect for what you were saying. It's essentially the ability to zoom out a little bit in the daily and weekly. Like you can't necessarily zoom out to that level. Unless for some, you have this special ability to kind of keep a rolling year, you know what I mean? And you can, but even then.
But I do think there is that context of, as we talk about a daily quiet time, I think the first of the year is a good way to kind of look at, okay, God, here's the next year, kind of in the context of what do you have for me today? What do you have for me this year? In that context of, I may be able to accomplish these things, but yet there's probably some things that I won't be able to accomplish, and that'll still be 2025, should the Lord tarry, that kind of thing.
Have you heard that saying, we underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 years, or overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year and underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 years?
Yep.
I almost wonder, if we should be doing that more too, right? Like the 5 year planning.
Yep.
To be able to say, here's my desire for in 5 years, and here's maybe what this year will look like in terms of accomplishing that. But it's not make or break on the year turn.
Exactly.
Whether because you're living bigger than that, right? Yep. And I think that would be a cool, effort.
Oh, sure.
Cool kind of a cool thing to push is this idea. Rather than simply focusing on a year, rather spend that effort on the 5 year every year.
I gotcha.
Right. So instead of it being an annual thing every year, it's a rolling 5 year review. And
the thing I like about that dynamic is I'm not even concerned so much about the 5 year in the context, as long as I'm faithful each year. I think at the end of 5 years, I might be able to look back and say, wow, look at what God has done in that process. Yeah. Because I think, we do tend to think, well, I can do this and this and this. And maybe I don't get all 4 of those things done. But if I get 3 of those and and something else that just kind of came along, and I look back at the end of 5 years, that's give or take 20 things, that have been, done. And yeah.
And some things are 5 year things.
Yes.
Like I want to become a public speaker. You know,
Sure.
like I want to become better at public speaking.
Yep.
I think, again, often we'll overestimate, I can figure that out in 1 year. Like I can just whatever. And I think that would be a realistic 5-year thing to say, how did this year push me toward that? You know, and
Yeah.
because in order to become what I would call good, I think it is a 5-year process. You're not going to become a good public speaker in 1 year. You know, you replace public speaker with many, many things, right?
Well, and I think part of that too, when you think about, life, each moment for learning is about opportunity, and you're not going to have enough ability, in my opinion. I mean, granted, unless somebody, out of the blue makes you a pastor of a church or something, it's not like you're going to have the context to be able to be a public speaker on a daily basis.
Right.
But you're continuing to kind of grow those as opportunities provide themselves. Yeah. And, at the end of 5 years, that's, and more opportunity comes as, you put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. But I think there's something to be said for, as I grow in my desire to do something, I think it's neat how God provides opportunity, for that.
Yeah, that's true.
That I might not have had otherwise. But once I start kind of, putting my toe in the water, I think of you, as you kind of began your worship journey, it's like, it wasn't something you necessarily sought out to do, from a kid. It was very much something that came to you later on, and, that kind of thing, as you've learned to play and sing, and, and you pick up another instrument, or, do the rhythm piece, that kind of thing. In the context, it's just fun to watch. Yeah.
And you're right about those opportunities, kind of God opening those opportunities when your heart, has certain desires or whatever. I definitely, the amount I could do, music or worship is way more than I have the the time and, you know what I mean? The bandwidth for now, where that wasn't, true for a long time, but it was kind of a growing.
Sure.
And that's how it works, right? The more competent and the better your abilities are in any given area, the more opportunities will come your way.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking too, like about public speaking or music. That's a good one. If you like, I want to learn to play guitar or piano or whatever, I hear that a lot, and I think that's amazing. I think it's so important to realize too, if you're sticking with a 1 year plan, you're not going to be good in 1 year. It doesn't you're going to be very disgruntled in 1 year. So if your goals are limited to 1 year, well, at the end of 1 year, it's a good chance you'll give up.
Yeah.
But if you have a goal of in 5 years, I want to be able to play at this event, right? Or I want to be able to speak to this number of people and be comfortable, or whatever that is, right? Well, at the end of 1 year, you're going to, like I said, it's not going to be all amazing and happy and whatever, but you're going to see that the footsteps you took in that 1 year that are contributing to that 5 year goal. And you can say, and then year two, I can build on this foundation that started in year one.
Agreed.
And I think anything like those kinds of things are going to require a much bigger goal mindset.
No doubt.
Especially, again, learning something new. That first year always sucks. It just does. Unless you're mind like water. You're cool with the journey or whatever. But I was never that way. Like learning a new thing, I always hated it because it's like I was supposed to be good at this already.
Yeah.
And,
we want that instantaneous, ability and reward without the sweat equity, It's like,
Yeah. And, there's some things that in life that come easy and other things that don't, and like, I was pretty good at getting good grades in high school and various things that nothing ever seemed super hard.
Sure.
Until I tried to learn the guitar, and I'm like, this should just be
like
easy.
all those other things.
Like I shouldn't be so, it shouldn't be so frustratingly hard. And I really felt that way for a long time. And then as I started to learn to sing and do that, it was kind of the same thing. Like, why is this not as easy as it should be? It's like, well, my perspective is a little off, I think. And I've learned to appreciate that more.
It's interesting to think about that. And how have you learned to decide what to challenge yourself to continue in, and what you say, okay, this isn't me.
Yeah.
And it was just a nice thought, but that's something I need to set aside.
It's a good question. I mean, I have thoughts. Do you have things like that too? I'm sure you can.
Well, it's for me, I was asking you because I realized you do have more of a higher expectation from my perspective.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Of your ability.
Yeah.
You know. And granted, some of that, you know, maybe my expectation of myself has mellowed with age, you know, to where I don't necessarily, I do what I can to the best of my ability, knowing what I can, but it's like, and that's why I was thinking about it from a multi-generational, you know, it's like, how do I know, how do I recognize the areas that I need to challenge myself in, where I still need to be stepping out, taking the new ground, if you will.
Even when it's hard. Yeah.
Even when it's hard.
Pushing through the hard. Yeah.
Pushing through the hard, no matter how old I am.
Yeah.
But also being able to recognize that, okay, this isn't what I was designed to do. And, you know, though that week was just that week, you know, it's like, from my perspective, I'm not going to be a worship leader. You know what I mean? I just don't have a voice for leading worship. And my range, you know, those kind of things. I'm not a great singer. I mean, granted, I don't mind speaking, you know, but, you know, that would be something that it's like, from my perspective, it would be foolish for me to take on that role of wanting to be a worship leader.
Yeah, I get it, and I also feel like so many people who say that, and I don't think that, I'm not saying this is true of you, but so many people say that just...
Yes, Mark, you're right. You can't sing.
No, I'm saying...
Just kidding.
Some people who say that aren't willing to endure what it would take to become good at it.
Agreed.
And,
Agreed.
you know, it's like, well, I'd have to sing in front of people, and I would sound bad, and I can't endure just that. Just that in and of itself isn't worth the pain. And I understand that. And for me, one of the things that, like preaching at church was one of those things that I kind of had this desire of my heart to do that from the time when I was a teenager. Just thought that was going to be a big part of what ministry looked like for me. And so I preached at Generations a couple times, and I feel like I did fine, great, whatever.
You did great.
But the toll that it took on me. And it's one of those things where it definitely was a struggle of what you're saying. Like, when do you push through that pain and that difficulty because it's worth it? And for me, it was always like, well, of course that thing's worth it. And of course you know, but it got to the point, like, it would trigger depression almost every time I preached. Okay. And I would have to fight through that.
Wow.
And it was just such an existential thing for me. And, you know, other things have been that way too, but often for me, when it kind of triggers into that certain, you know, that level, that's when I have to really take it seriously. Like, is this really worth that or not? Sure. You know?
Yeah. When you recognize the consequences that go along with that activity, it's like, okay.
Yeah. And music has certainly hit that nerve of many times through my time working at it, but the difference was the amount of time in it. So like with music, I almost never worry leading up to an event or performance. I don't really struggle with that, those nerves. I mean, you know, good nerves, but not like, oh, am I gonna mess up? I kind of just assume it's going to be fine and I'm going to do fine. And then when I don't, that's when it's kind of devastating. Like, I can't believe I messed up. Like, how, you know, that's impossible. You know, I don't know. It's just this like really shakes me. Like, wow, I really messed up, you know? Especially, you know, I would say I'm growing through that. Now it's not nearly as impactful, but for, a long time there. And then it's also depending on the context. Like if I messed up at church, like that felt like it had a much bigger impact. because of specifically people I was trying to impress or cared about their opinion, and knowing, you know, that this could impact that was really, really hard on me. And I would struggle with that for a good week sometimes. But
Sure.
preaching, it would be the leading up to. So I would know I was preaching, you know, in 6 months, right?
Yeah.
I'd know that far in advance. And
you'd have a topic at that point routinely? Would the schedule go out that far?
yeah, you usually have the sermon series
I gotcha.
that far out, right? Like
Sure.
we're talking about whatever. And so I would start mulling on it. And I always enjoyed that part. But as the time got compressed, my stress just exponentially would increase. And I would be dwelling on thinking about, like, am I going to get it done in time? You know, like, just like, there's so much to do, and, you know, so much prep and so much, it just, and it really, honestly, when I look at the prep and all that stuff, it wasn't crazy. Like, my mind just couldn't quite chill, you know, and it would always just really take a toll on me, to the point where I would just be like, why am I doing this? And why am I doing anything? You know,
I gotcha.
It really, really messed with me. And so after, you know, so many times to do it, and then here's the kicker too. Again, a lot of this ties into approval addiction, but I would get up, I'd do the thing, I felt like I did a good job, and then I was like, why isn't everyone banging my door down saying how good a job I did? Like, this, how is this worth it? You know, and then of course at preaching, right? Like, I put that on the altar every single time, and I've had to just be like, of course this isn't about that. And then I almost had to get to a place where mentally I didn't care what people thought, but that also felt so flat and empty. Like, I do care. It does matter. I want this to matter. And, like, if I don't care what people think, I want to care. I do care that it impacts them, or else why the heck am I doing it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that started to become a thing. Like, did anyone hear it? Did it matter? Did it make an impact? You know?
Sure.
And all of those things, the trade-off just wasn't worth it. Where something like this podcast, minimal prep, and I feel like, you know, I'm able to make whatever impact I'm able to make, but the stakes aren't so high,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's a good example of something that I just said, you know, I just don't think that's what I'm meant to be doing right now. Like, I care about my family too much to take myself out of the game for 2 months or a month or whatever that, you know, because it really would just, like Megan would say, it was just like, it's a different place, but you know.
Oh, wow.
Like, my mind was just always, I don't know, it was consuming. So I think that's a good example for me, is if it's, we talk about, in my accountability group, we meet once a week and we have these questions we go through. And one of the questions is, are there any distractions in your life that are preventing you from pursuing God's purpose in your life? You know, the specific things God's called you to do. And for me, it was kind of a eureka moment, or a slow eureka. It certainly wasn't like, oh, that's what, but it, like, slowly over time realized preaching's a distraction from what God's called me to do.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
like, you know, you never would think that's true.
Yeah.
And it became more, that was a realization for me. Like, I'm called to be a father and a husband, and, you know, CR, I'm very involved there. And,
Yeah.
you know, this podcast, all these things
Prioritize.
where it's very clear that I'm supposed to be doing that. And that's one of the
That's the
purposes
thing that
right
only
now.
I can do.
Yeah. Right
Yeah.
now too. It's
Exactly.
also about, maybe someday. Right. And I think that's an important piece to this question you asked too, but
Sure.
like, maybe someday.
Yep.
Anyway, so that became the realization, oh, it's a distraction. It's not what I'm supposed to be doing, and everything else is a distraction. No, it's actually the other way around, where these are the things God's very clearly
Wow.
called me to do, and that thing's distracting me from it, so I have to say no. And where music has always been squarely right in the smack in the middle of what God's having me to do right now. You know, my involvement
Neat.
with CR, my family, they all do, you know, my wife does music, my kids do music, you know, like,
Sure.
so I was squarely kind of in that zone.
Yep.
And again, it wouldn't take me out of the game for a month, you know, like it's not that kind of thing. So, that's a long answer, but I do think it really has to do with the level of impact that it has on your life, and whether that impact is worth the trade-off. And I think you have to, the only way you know that is if you're continually evaluating or taking time to reflect on it. You know what I mean? So I think,
do.
yeah. I think that reflection is so important. If you wait a year to figure out, am I on the right track? You might be a year off track. And I think it's important to continue that evaluation on a regular basis.
I think it is what you're describing from my perspective becomes that healthy self-awareness type thing, that I'm growing.
But that's
in
a practice thing.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, it is. But it is, even knowing that is a thing is definitely a thing,
Yeah, it is a thing.
to be able to say, okay, yeah, what did I do? Because I think from my perspective, I don't necessarily have real high expectations. I try to keep my expectations pretty healthy. Yeah. And if anything, I focus, on the things once I've done something, I kind of focus on, okay, what could have made that better? Or, what did I miss?
Iterating.
Yeah. That I'll try to remember to do better next time, in that context of, it's like, okay, it was good. Nice job. But okay, how can we do it better for next time? I think that's kind of it's a little bit of the difference in our mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I very much value. And I think I consider that wisdom. And I have been trying to adjust my way of thinking to that degree over the last,
I gotcha,
whatever years. Like that is my goal, is to get closer to that side of the equation.
Yeah.
Because as nice as it sounded, what you were saying earlier about my expectations is actually a problem, right? Like it can be problematic to where it can cause a lot of distress.
Sure.
Yeah. Like you get up and you don't do 100% amazing, and you deal with that and you fight with that and you wrestle with that, and it's a little bit over the top. Like, come on, Justin.
No, and that's I think that's a part of it. I think it is interesting as I think about what you share and kind of what it's like that 6 months leading up, typically I find that, if I'm to do that, it is amazing how God provides what he wants me to say when he provides the opportunity, kind of that whole dynamic, not that I'll still do it, perfectly in my own, but you were on the renewal that we did, that we had for, the couple that we know together, that kind of thing. It was like most of what I said was something that just God brought to my heart out of a moment of time, and being able to say, okay, this connects with that. And it's amazing how God can do that. And, and then it kind of came down to the fact that, in what I shared, I didn't want it to come across as blaming, and that was the only thing that I would have changed. That there were moments when I compared the horse and the dog, I didn't want it to seem like I was blaming, but yet growing in that awareness.
Don't be the dog. Come on, guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't want it to seem like I was fault finding, but yet that ability to say, okay, yes, this is my tendency. I tend to be, a little more determined, or I tend to focus on what power looks like. And, that's just part of my self-awareness type stuff. And as I grow, I can recognize, okay, the combination of the two is good. So just because you like power and I might be more determined doesn't mean that those things are bad. It's that ability to recognize how we join them So I love that. I think you did a nice job, and I think you, while not saying it, and I'm real disappointed in you, Mark, but you mentioned the stick in those aspects to be able to say the stick. Yeah, that's where the disappointment comes.
I'm like, come on,
I know
Mark.
how you're disappointed.
It's very clear that you're speaking about the stick. You should just say it, and then give me credit.
I should. You are correct, Justin. I still have room for self-awareness.
Yes, exactly. No, but
and even others' awareness. Justin wants me to remember the stick. He can take credit for the stick analogy.
Anyway, one of the things I love about the stick is that it just gives so much balance to the conversation, and it's much easier to talk about the hard stuff because it's attached to this good stuff, and it's really you can't really detach them. So it's about talking about the balance, and I feel like that's exactly what you were doing. I think the struggle is when we use words like no offense or whatever, when it's like well, why is that offensive? And or we try and cover for the bad. And it's like, I don't think we need to cover for the bad. I think we can just speak to it in a way that says this is a reality, and so and it's balanced by this other thing, and they kind of go hand in hand. So it's about anyway, and I feel like that's what you did. I feel like you did a good job of that, and but I as you described what you were saying, I could hear, like I could see what you're saying. I could see how you could reflect on that. But I certainly.
And sometimes I think, it is that aspect of people don't hear it that way.
Right.
But I'm concerned at times that it could have come across that way.
But
it's not.
It's good. I think it's good to iterate on yourself that way.
And I think that's the beauty of, communication in general.
Yes.
So often, it's not just me saying what I'm saying, but it's also how people hear it that I have very little control over. So that's the, can you say what you mean? Can you understand what you hear type stuff? It's reciprocal.
Context matters so much too when you're speaking.
Sure.
Even, it's public speaking, but even normal speaking, but and you are in a room full of people who just love you and consider you our brother, and we do life with you. And so we know who Mark is.
I gotcha.
We know what you're saying. We know your heart. So you couldn't do wrong in that context. In my perspective, you could totally put your foot in your mouth, and everyone would just be chuckling and love you for it. I think context is really important too to remember when you're speaking. And but maybe you put more iterations, rounds into review. If you're doing a wedding or vow renewal or something, and in a context where there might be antagonistic family members who are people who aren't, whatever. Maybe they're opposed to that gender biases or whatever. Maybe you put more thought into it. You have to consider that. But I think context really matters. And that's one of the so I still speak occasionally at CR, and that's never a problem because that's my family.
Sure.
It's an opportunity to talk to my family. I love talking to my family, whether it's my family in the house over there or my family on Friday nights. I love talking to you, Mark.
Sure.
I love talking to my family.
And your listeners, the listeners.
Yeah. Exactly. You're our family. How I see it, family. We invited them into our home by taking some pictures of our trees and posting.
There you go.
And
Thank you for doing that.
I didn't show you that, but
thanks for doing
that. We talked about it, and then we did it. So I'm proud of myself. 2023 complete.
Yes, indeed. So, that being said, 2024.
Yeah.
As far as God allowing, that whole aspect, not the, it's not about us, saying we're going to go here and we're going to do this. But in that process, what are you being called to in 2024 that only Justin can do?
So for the last few years, my purpose as a dad is just really cleared up, and that's a huge win for me, honestly, because I've always been very distracted by shiny, and for a long time I thought ministry and preaching, all those things, those are the pinnacle.
I hear you.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And
performance.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about my life is God has gifted me the opportunity to see what the quote unquote pinnacle was like, and then said, "Are you sure that's what you want? I don't think that's what you want. I think you should be doing what I asked you to do."
Sure.
And I'm being tongue in cheek. I mean, I think it's all part of the journey, but I think that's one of the beautiful things is being able to operate in some of those areas. Being able to preach a few times and going, that's not for me right now, and that's okay. And I also have felt such an incredible amount of accomplishment of that's something I wanted to do from when I was young, and I was able to do it. And so I don't take away from it. I think it's sheesh. I don't remember the question.
Prioritizing your 2024.
So for me, that's kind of the clearest thing
Being
right now.
father.
Yeah. And so really every opportunity that's going to come for the next few years is going to be filtered through how does this impact that. And even I've been working on this side job, and I put a lot of thought and conversation with Megan into like, is this worth it? And by worth it, I mean not just the money and the whatever, but like the time that will be taken away at Christmas and like where my focus will be. And but even in that, like being able to disengage from that and engage with the family and realizing how important that is. Like where before it'd be like, yeah, I have this work, I have to, and I'm here, but I really need to get back to work. But now it's like I'm here and I'm here, and then as soon as that's done, okay, back to that and be. So for me, that's kind of the clearest thing in the next few years, and every opportunity that comes is kind of filtered through that. Because again, I think that is one of the beautiful things is I've reach some of the things that have been lifelong desires, doing music and worship and preaching, and some of those things are heart's desires, things that I've been given in some senses, and that just has, I would say, cured me of a lot of stuff. Say work-wise too. There's some things work-wise that I've accomplished that I've recognized, like, yeah, this Pinnacle, it's not as wonderful as whatever that looks like those accomplishments. So I think I've reached a point in my life where I'm okay with just one day at a time and see, considering each opportunity as it comes and not being so busy, so planny, so intentional, but being intentional with the moments.
Sure.
And I also realize in clarifying all of those things, one of the things that only Justin can do and that Justin's good at is one-on-one interactions with people and mentoring and kind of that brotherhood relationship that I have with many guys, and realizing like of all the areas where I feel like I'm most gifted, it's in that relational one-on-one opportunity with people, and being able to make sure my plate isn't so full that those can't happen.
Sure.
Somewhat impromptu. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
So I don't know that I have a really great answer to like specifically 24. It's more as like kind of my broad perspective on the years in front of me.
Continuing to grow in prioritizing family, is definitely what I heard in that process. And second to that is, establishing, accountability type relationships with other, people, and continuing to make sure that I'm about the things that only I can do in that gifting that God has given you. That's kind of what I heard in the process.
Yeah. And all of that, everything you just described, none of that looks like a goalpost in the ground at the end of 2024, right?
No,
like they're not, I can't. But I also haven't put that much time into thinking about it.
No, but and yet part of that father role is going to change, or it's going to look different at the end of 24 with a 16-year-old going on 17, just the different dynamics as your children change, and being able to adjust to those differences and how you and Megan do that as a couple, in that kind of dynamic, and being able to recognize, okay, this side stuff that you're currently doing, there may be more of that, if it's beneficial, both, from a financial perspective, and it offers me more flexibility with my time. Why not? And that can be a part of that 2024, but I'm still going to kind of hold that in a sense of looseness that says, okay, I may be open to a little more of this, but how do I create boundaries around it?
Right.
Yeah. No.
Right. And this has been a good test of that, because I haven't done any side work in quite some time. Kind of put that aside because anyway, but it's been good. It's okay. I can kind of define it. And then even some of our conversations about how it could look better in planning for those things, and some of the boundaries to put in place. And I think one of the things you and I talked about is not allowing hard deadlines, and being able to say, I'll only take things that I can say it should take between 3 and 6 months, or whatever. And like kind of having, if you want me, this is what you get kind of thing. And that's been helpful for me in that mindset. But
no, fair enough. I like it.
Yeah.
So that being said, to you, our listening family,
yes,
what's
your 5-year plans? Tell us.
Yes, we encourage you to be able to take the opportunity for a new year and say, okay, how do I want to grow in this next year, and how can, and even being able to look back and see how you've grown in the last 5 years and celebrate, what God has done and how he has blessed your obedience in that process, and yet continuing to recognize, okay, he's not done with me yet.
Yeah.
And there's still more for 2024, and it's not about resting on what he has done. It's about continuing in the process of growing, in my faith and in my spiritual relational relationship with Jesus Christ. So
it's good.
We invite you to join us on this journey for the new year, and we look forward to hearing from each and every one of you in the process, and would know that we appreciate you. We appreciate your faithfulness in 2023 as you've listened, and yet know that each opportunity we get to interact with you in 2024 is an opportunity we value and appreciate when you come up and say, hey, I just finished listening to your podcast and I enjoyed this, or, hey, have you thought about this, and that kind of thing. Know that we relish and appreciate those opportunities to interact with each and every one of you as time and opportunity allows. So,
amen. Hey. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well, Justin. That's how we see it.
Listeners.
Yes, that's how we see it.
Hey, thank you for listening to our podcast. If you like How I See It, please do all the things that podcasts tell you to do. Subscribe, rate, review, follow us, and or talk nicely about us on social media. If you want to reach out, the email is us@howiseeit.click. Yep, I said .click, as in .click. Please tell your friends about this show, and we'll see you on the next one.